I understand a lot of y'all are going to hate me for this video. All I ask is you hear me out. All I ask is you hear about my explanation, wait till the end of the video, and go down to the comment section. And then at that point, you can call me an idiot and tell me why I'm so dumb. But with these first two running backs, I honestly don't think that many people are going to be calling me an idiot because Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert have severely capped ceilings overall. Now, yeah, the depth chart's wide open in Miami. I mean, right now it looks like that any of these guys can be a starting running back. And if you're a starting running back in this Miami Dolphins offense, you should be able to score points, right? Well, in my mind, Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert aren't the guys to do so. Mostert is a running back that is 31 years old. We know we want to be fading running backs once they turn 27, 28. The man's 31. And the only reason that people know his name, the only reason that he is someone that fantasy drafters view in a particular light is because of one playoff game against the Green Bay Packers way back in the day that everybody watched. In reality, if you look at Mostert, this is a running back that has played 8 seasons in the NFL. And in those 8 seasons, he has one game with 20 or more carries. Yes, you heard me correctly. He has one game with 20 or more carries. It's a running back that over the past 3 years has seen a 6.5% team target share as well. So we have a running back that's not going to command volume as a rusher. You have a running back that doesn't catch the ball. So why would you draft him? He's 31. Now, our next guy with Jeff Wilson, I mean, he's a little bit younger, right? He's turning 28 this season, but I mean, the point of this is just to illustrate that these running backs aren't getting any better. They're not getting any younger here. And with Jeff Wilson, back-to-back years now, he's averaged a running back 46 finish from a points per game perspective. I mean, looking at him as well from a receiving standpoint, he has a 5.71% team target share over the past 3 years. Now, if you're looking at the 5 seasons Jeff Wilson has played, he has only had 4 games in his NFL career with 20 or more rush attempts. So very similar to Mostert. This is a running back that, 1, will not see volume as a rusher, and 2, will not catch the ball out of the backfield. There's no reason to draft either one of these guys. While, yeah, the depth chart's wide open, Devon Achane's going to be the receiving down back in this offense. It's going to be a 3-man running back by committee, and that is best case scenario for these players where you still may have Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt. I mean, hell, maybe even Jonathan Taylor come over to the Miami Dolphins. See, I mean, especially in ESPN drafts, like your regular redraft format, these running backs are going as RB40, RB41. I would rather take a swing on a player like Zach Charbonnet going after, I mean, Elijah Mitchell, hell yeah, going after. Tyler Algier going after. Devon Achane's RB50. Why the hell are people drafting these guys here? Now, our next guy is a running back that has fallen down a considerable amount. I mean, y'all know we've been doing those underdog drafts every single night on the live stream since April. And back April, May, people were laughing at me for my Samaje Perine take as this being a running back with no real upside, particularly for the fantasy football playoffs is what we are looking at. But especially now that Javonte Williams is playing preseason games, people thought Javonte was going to be missing half the season, and he's going to be playing in the preseason. So Samaje Perine's going to get 0 run with no Javonte Williams in this offense. And I know what you're going to say, right? You're going to say, come on, Mason, you clown. Don't you know that Samaje Perine was involved with the Cincinnati Bengals offense last year? Maybe that's true, right? Maybe Samaje Perine is able to carry over the role that he had in Cincinnati in an elite level offense last season where he averaged about 3 targets per game and 6 rush attempts per game. Let's say he carries that over to a much worse Denver Broncos offense. What are you looking at? The running back 43 from a points per game perspective. And that's operating under the assumption he carries that workload over. Because at the end of the day, if you're looking at Samaje Perine, this is a running back that has had 1 season in his entire NFL career with more than 100 rushing attempts. And that was as a rookie back in 2017. The man's turning 28 at the beginning of this next season. I'm not taking veteran running backs that have never been good in fantasy football before. I'm not doing it. Now, our next guy, Rashad White, is not a veteran, right? I mean, Rashad White is pretty young, and I know a lot of people are excited. Now, if you're going to be looking at your casual ESPN regular redraft leagues, their drafters are pretty excited about Rashad White. Rashad White's the running back 18 off the board. He's going directly behind Jahmyr Gibbs, Najee Harris, Dameon Pierce, and directly ahead of Alvin Kamara, Miles Sanders, James Conner, and Kenneth Walker. Now, if you're going to go over and look at those more advanced leagues, if you're going to look at those best ball drafts on Underdog, there instead of the running back 18, you actually have Rashad White down as the running back 27. There are a couple of different reasons for this, but one being is Underdog drafters understand how bad this situation is with Rashad White and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, right now you are looking at the Bucs as a team that has their over-under on wins at 6.5 going into this next season. 6.5. And people are taking the under on that. So you have the Bucs most likely winning 5 to 6 games. We've done the historical research to show that bad NFL teams typically don't lead to productive RBs. On top of this, if you look at the situation this past season with Tom Brady under center for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this was a bad enough situation where Leonard Fournette averaged 3.5 yards per carry. Rashad White only at 3.7 yards per carry. So the situation's just going to be too bad where Rashad White doesn't really have a ton of upside in this instance. Now, going over to our next guy, we are going to be looking at Derrick Henry. And I want to be fully transparent. It is going to be very dependent on the format that you're playing in on if you should take Derrick Henry or not. I mean, if you look at the Underdog pick'ems right now and look at where they are projecting Derrick Henry on Underdog, they are projecting Henry to have more rushing yards than anybody else in the NFL. His pick'em line's about 1,200 rushing yards, and he's at 9.5 rushing touchdowns, half a receiving touchdown, 6.5 100 or more rushing yard games. Now, with this being said, there's a wild difference in where Derrick Henry is being drafted in a half PPR format on Underdog versus where he's being drafted in your regular ESPN draft. Because if we look at your regular ESPN draft, there Derrick Henry is the running back 5. There Derrick Henry has an ADP of 12.0, and the guys directly after him, hell, you can get Nick Chubb after him at 17.2, and I'll talk about why Chubb's a better pick in just one second. But I do want to illustrate that it's okay if you want to draft him in Underdog Fantasy drafts, right? I mean, it's going to be a completely different price point over there, and I have drafted Derrick Henry a ton when I'm getting him in the 3rd round of a half PPR format. That's where you want to be taking him. So just to recap real quick before we dive into this profile. Do not draft him in round 1 in your regular ESPN draft. Yes, you can draft him in a half PPR Underdog draft in the 3rd round. That is completely fine. Now, before we get into the profile, of course, if y'all want to get into one of those Underdog drafts, which we are doing every single night on the live stream, and we won't stop until NFL kickoff is here, you can find the link in the live chat description comment section. Promo code FLOCK is going to get you a 100% deposit match up to $100. Plus, promo code FLOCK is going to get you our 2023 fantasy football rankings, as well as a free trial to flockfantasy.com where you can find our 2023 fantasy football draft guide. This is the same site that I won $150,000 on last year with their best ball drafts. There's no time commitment at all during the season. And also the same site that has all the pick'ems that you're seeing in this video. My favorite pick'em at the running back position right now is actually going to be DeAndre Swift for more rushing yards than Damian Harris this next season. But going over to this Derrick Henry profile, I want to admit, yes, there's a lot of upside. Derrick Henry is a freak of nature. Derrick Henry is the outlier of all outliers. Over the past 3 years, Derrick Henry has averaged 121 total yards per game. Over the past 3 years, Derrick Henry has had a top 5 running back finish each and every season. But this is the year where I'm worried. This is the year where I'm saying that it's probably going to stop. The reason being is, 1, Derrick Henry turns 30 at the end of this next season. Derrick Henry is a running back turning 30. Let's let that sink in just a bit. Derrick Henry is going to be running behind the worst offensive line in the entire NFL. Now, with this being said, maybe you want to say, well, Mason, come on, man. I mean, Derrick Henry was so good at 29 years old. There's no reason to assume that he's going to decline at 30, even if he's running behind the worst offensive line in the NFL. So what I did is I went over to the RotoViz screener and I looked at all running backs in their age 29 season to pose something similar to what we just had with Derrick Henry this past year. And there were a couple of running backs that came back that, I mean, were elite level running backs at their peak, right? Arian Foster, phenomenal. LaShawn McCoy, great. I mean, hell, he won me my first fantasy football championship. Curtis Martin, Marshawn Lynch, DeMarco Murray, all these running backs were phenomenal in their own right. And all these running backs got way worse going into their age 30 season. You had Arian Foster getting injured in his age 30 year and only playing 4 games. You had LaShawn McCoy falling from about 20 points per game down to 16.5 points per game. You had Curtis Martin falling from about 19 points per game down to 14.9 points per game. You had Marshawn Lynch going from 19 points per game down to 12 points per game. And you had DeMarco Murray going from 18.5 points per game down to 11.5 points per game. So I can't do it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be fading Derrick Henry if you have to take him in round 1 of a full PPR format when we have historical proof that elite level running backs cannot maintain that level of play going into their age 30 season. And we combine this with the fact that he's running behind the worst offensive line in the entire NFL. Now, going over to our next RB, going to be another aging veteran. We are going to have Aaron Jones here. And I understand a lot of people really like Aaron Jones, right? And I get it. Aaron Jones has been great over the past 3 years. Over the past 3 seasons, Aaron Jones has averaged the running back 10 finish from a points per game perspective. But we have similar concerns here with Aaron Jones to Derrick Henry. Aaron Jones is going to be turning 29 years old December 2nd this next season. We know running backs historically fall off at 27, 28. And I mean, it's great that Aaron Jones has been able to make it this far. But nonetheless, if we go through and look at this situation that you have in Green Bay this next season, Las Vegas sportsbooks are telling us that just like the Tennessee Titans, this is going to be a very bad team. They have the Green Bay Packers currently sitting at 7.5 wins for their over-under. Now, if we're going to go ahead and look at the historical comps that you have with Aaron Jones, these were the running backs that were able to post similar age 28 seasons dating back to the year 2000. You had Jamal Charles. Jamal Charles, great running back, right? I mean, Aaron Jones would be lucky to have that kind of career. You had Jamal Anderson, Steven Jackson, Larry Johnson, Fred Jackson, Chester Taylor, Joique Bell, Chris Johnson. I mean, hell, we know how good Chris Johnson was. Darren McFadden, Raheem Mostert. So if we look at all these RBs, you're going to notice something very similar to the situation that you had with Derrick Henry. In the case of Jamal Charles, he got injured going into his age 29 season that Aaron Jones is right now. Jamal Anderson got injured going into that age 29 season. Steven Jackson went from 15 points per game down to 12.5 points per game. Larry Johnson, 16 points per game down to 11.7. Fred Jackson, 13.6 down to 11.7. Chester Taylor, 13.1 down to 10.3. Joique Bell, 13.5 down to 8. Chris Johnson, 15 points per game down to 7.3. Darren McFadden, 12.5 points per game down to 4.5. And Raheem Mostert, 12.7 down to 2. So every single running back going into their age 29 season, which Aaron Jones is right now, either was injured or declined dramatically from their previous season finish. It's not popular. Nobody likes to talk about it. But you probably should not be drafting running backs that are 29, 30 years old in very bad offenses. Now, going over to our next guy, we are going to be looking at Cam Akers, who is the favorite RB right now for a lot of drafters. And I understand why, right? I mean, if you're looking at the argument for Cam Akers, it's Mason. Look at what he did at the end of this past season. If you look at the end of 2022, Cam Akers, 104 rushing yards against the Seattle Seahawks, 123 rushing yards against the Los Angeles Chargers, 118 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns on Christmas against the Denver Broncos when that Rams team won 51-14. Cam Akers won people a ton of money in underdog tournaments last year if you were able to sneak an Akers team through to the fantasy football playoff tournament. But with this being said, when it comes to Cam Akers, we've seen this before, ladies and gentlemen. We've seen every season now at the end of the year, for whatever reason, Cam Akers turns into a workhorse level running back. You go back to his rookie season. Cam Akers, 21, 29, 15, 21, 28, 18 carries to end the year. You go back to 2021. 17, 24, 13 carries to end the season as well. This is a continued trend of Cam Akers not really doing anything during the season and coming on strong at the very end of the year to trick fantasy drafters into drafting him that next season. I mean, if we're going to look at 2022 and the year 2020, really the only seasons we've had from Cam Akers as a starting running back in Los Angeles, he has been on average the running back 44 from a points per game perspective. He's averaged 11.8 carries per game. And most concerningly, he has averaged 1.1 targets per game. So Akers is a running back with the torn Achilles in his past. That has never been good from a fantasy football perspective. That tricks drafters into taking him because what he does at the end of every single season. And what's most concerning about Cam Akers is the situation he finds himself in this next year. Now, there's a good thing about this situation, and that's going to be that there's zero competition. Hell, the running back 2 on this depth chart previously, Sony Michel, just retired. So right now you have Kyron Williams, you have Zach Evans, you have Royce Freeman, you have nobody here outside of Cam Akers, right? But it simply may not matter whenever at the end of the day, the Los Angeles Rams project to have a bottom 5 offensive line in the entire NFL. And if you look at Las Vegas sportsbooks right now, they have the Rams at 6.5 wins. They have the Rams to be a worse team than the Packers. The Rams to be a worse team than the Titans. And it's actually minus 130, minus 120 on the under for that 6.5. So I don't know. I am not going to draft Akers because he's never been productive in fantasy and he's going to be in a horrendous offense on a horrendous team this next year. I'm not going to draft Rashad White because he's never been productive in fantasy and he's going to be in a horrendous offense in a horrendous situation this next season. I'm not drafting Samaje Perine because he's never been good in fantasy and he's not going to be in a good situation this next year. I'm not going to draft Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert because they've never been good in fantasy and they're pushing 31 years old. And I'm not going to draft Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, because they're going to be in very bad offenses. And we have historical data that shows that running backs at this age are expected to fall off. And it has happened in every single instance since the year 2000. But I think that's all I have for y'all. Again, please go to the comment section. Let me know why I'm stupid. Let me know what I'm missing. And of course, if you want to check out any of those pick'em lines you saw on Underdog Fantasy, or if you want to get in a draft and crush me tonight, you can go out there and you can take these players. We are drafting every single night on Underdog Fantasy. They're best ball tournaments, so no time commitment at all during the year. So I drafted 700 teams and won $150,000 last season. If you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. Plus, you're going to get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flockfantasy.com where you can find our 2023 fantasy football draft guide. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. I really hope that you have a great day, and I really hope that I get to draft with you in a live stream later today.